Shreveport Deputy Chief of Police Bill Goodin is here. Hey, Mr. Bill, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I am well. Thank you for having me.
So 2017 crime numbers, there's some good and there's some bad. Let's start with the good.
Well, and you know, the standard caveat that we throw out there whenever we talk about statistics, and this is very important, statistics are important. They help us to identify emerging crime patterns. They help us to efficiently allocate our resources, and they're how we report information to the Department of Justice. But at the same time, it's incumbent upon us as police officers, as law enforcement officials, to understand that each one of these numbers we're about to talk about represents a victim, a person who has suffered some sort of loss, and that's not lost on us. And we understand that we are their advocates. We have to be that victim advocate role. So we saw about a 1% overall increase in total crimes from 2016 to 2017. There were some areas that and again, let me be clear, when I talk about we, I'm talking about the community. I'm being inclusive, not exclusive of the police department, because, you know, law enforcement is a unique business, and that most of the time our successes come about as a result of good folks in neighborhoods all across this city stepping up and refusing to tolerate criminal activity in their neighborhoods. So it's a community effort, literally. But we did make some tremendous strides, especially towards the end of the year, coming into the last quarter, and we saw some decreases in some pretty big categories of crime. Robberies, in particularly, were down tremendously the last quarter in a time when we normally see them go up. So we did, as a community, as a police department, make some tremendous strides.
Mr. Bill, do you see the public perception may be the opposite of that people around Shreveport, community, no matter the community, no matter the part of town, might see crime, especially violent crime, as bad as it's ever been?
Well, and that's one of the challenges that we face daily as a police department is getting that message out there and making sure that we're engaging the public and dealing with that perception of crime as well.
The homicides. John Settle was in earlier and said, 50 murders in a year is unacceptable. Well, and he didn't want to look back into the 80s when we had the 80 or whatever. He said, what I care about is today. And I kind of get his point.
Absolutely. And I'll take it a step further to say that one homicide is unacceptable. A single homicide, the taking of a life, the most egregious offense, is unacceptable. And so we are, again, working very proactively. And what we've seen, and certainly without speaking very broadly, without speaking to one specific case, is that many times when we work a homicide, what we see is what we call a relationship-based crime, where we have at least two individuals involved in a dispute, where at some point during the course of that altercation, one or both makes a conscious decision to resolve that conflict inappropriately with violence. And so what we try to do, in addition to working with the community and empowering them, is to make sure that we focus on those things that we know have the potential to end with violence: domestic abuse cases, narcotics cases, cases where we apprehend folks who are illegally carrying firearms, or a convicted felon who's in possession of a firearm. So we're going to continue to drill down and focus on those type of crimes, and we believe that we can have a tangible positive impact on those numbers.
Bill, we're talking to Deputy Chief Bill Goodin with Shreveport Police Department. I've spoken to an area law enforcement top honcho. I'm not going to name names, but this person told me if I had a crime problem like Shreveport does, I'd have very few, if any, people still on desk jobs. I'd have people riding the neighborhoods, walking the neighborhoods, on bicycles in the neighborhood. My presence would be felt. Is that possible? Is that realistic?
Well, and of course, asset allocation, and our most valuable resource, literally and figuratively, are the people that work here. And if you would indulge me for just a second,
you bet.
Let me give a shameless plug to the men and women who work for the Shreveport Police Department every day. They come in, they put this uniform on, they do a difficult, dangerous job, and they do it with no fanfare and very few accolades. And I would, and I've said this many times, and every time I have an opportunity to do it, I do, that I would put the men and women who so proudly wear this badge up against any in the country. So just wanted to put that out there, and that's important. So when we talk about allocating those resources, decisions have to be made literally every day about how we're going to do that. And certainly I think Chief Crump has been clear since the beginning of his tenure as chief that he is willing to make changes. And he has done that, and we are continuing
tell
to
us,
do that.
Tell us about that. What changes have been made to address crime?
Well, and for instance, and we can talk about things that we can do that directly affect crime rates, we believe. And there's so many variables that have an impact on crime rates. You've got to be very cautious when we make correlations. But indirectly, I think we could say that Chief Crump made some substantive changes to the way that we recruit folks. And so what we saw in 2017 was that we hired almost 70 police officers. 69 police officers went to 2 police academies, which was up exponentially from where we had been in previous years. That's important because there's no doubt, and of course, speaking anecdotally, there's no doubt that the more officers we have, we believe we can reduce crime. So this year, we're budgeted for 2 academies where our goal is to hire 40 folks to start an academy next month and then 40 folks to start an academy in August. So that's important. Then Operation Long Haul. So some of the strategies that we have put in place here to get additional officers on the street, and that's a collaborative effort. That's the mayor, the city council giving us that $150,000 in July to move forward with some of those overtime initiatives.
Excuse me just a second, Bill. Michael Carter, who's head of the police union, as you know, he was highly critical of Long Haul, said it was underfunded and understaffed. Obviously, you disagree.
Well, and let me say this. We all, Sergeant Carter, John Settle, I think we all had the same goal, and we all want Shreveport to be a safe place. We want Shreveport. We want to reduce crime. We want to protect and serve. We want to do those things that the citizens expect us to do. And folks bring different perspectives to the table, and folks bring different opinions, and that's not unhealthy. That's a positive thing because inclusiveness, and especially from a law enforcement perspective, it's important that we look at all the facets of a problem because we're going to have to work together to solve it. So folks are going to bring different opinions to the table, and at the end of the day, each one of those has some value in a way. However, the chief of police has got to make decisions on a daily basis about how he or she is going to run the police department, and that's any police department from New York to L.A.
Bill, let me ask you this. Early this morning, 1 o'clock, 2 women at a club get in a fight. One stabs the other. Who's at fault here? I know people will holler, "Oh, the police need to do more." You can't be held accountable for every stupid thing people do, right?
Well, and crime is a complex sociological issue, and I think it's kind of human nature. Sometimes we want to distill things down to their simplest form. And there's so many facets, so many variables that have an impact on crime. Who's to say? Could alcohol have played a factor in the stabbing this morning? Absolutely. Could one of those individuals have a warrant? Now, this is entirely speculative on my part, hypothetical, but could one of those individuals have had a warrant? Absolutely. Could one of those individuals be on probation? So there's so many different things that play into these things. You have to be cautious about making correlations, but at the end of the day, as police officers, as a police department, we are responsible for crime reduction and not just reducing crime, but addressing the perception or the fear of crime in our communities. And again, we're going to work proactively to do those things.